Hello friends, welcome to the TSS. In this class we will discuss about the topic of running Flask application. In the last classes we had discussed how to set up an Flask environment by installing required softwares, and in this class we will use that installed softwares to run the Flask application, friends. So before going to this topic, one must understand the topics of Python basics and Python advanced concepts. So in order to know the codes snippets mentioned here, one must understand the preliminary basics of Python and Python OOPS concepts, friends. So if you want to learn those things, I had a series of Python basics and Python advanced in this channel. Please go through that and then come to these classes, friends. Okay. So to run a Flask application, first we need to create a Python file. So Flask is very simple, friends. So it's not like Django. Django is meant for developing a big and complex web applications, and its setup and running of Django application is somewhat bigger, procedure is bigger. But in the case of Flask, it is very simple. Just create a Python file and name that file with whatever name you want. I am creating a Python file with the name flask.py. So where I am creating this flask.py file, that means inside the Flask tutorials folder, which we had created earlier, and then inside that flask.py file we need to write our code, friends. So before going to the practicals, let me explain this code first, right? So what this code is telling here, first we need to import the Flask class from Flask module, right? And then we have to instantiate that Flask class to the reference variable called app. This variable name, you can take any variable name you want, you wish. Okay, I am taking app. This is a standard naming conventions. Okay, so to this Flask class we need to, this Flask constructor is required a variable, right, a name, double under, name, double under. In Python, this double under pattern indicates a special meaning, that means it's a special variable for Python, friends. Okay, which determines the current executing file. Okay, then so the instantiation of Flask class is over. Then after that, inside that Flask class we have one root decorator is there. So what is a decorator? The fundamental theory behind the decorator is it will add an additional functionality to the function which is defined under it. Okay, so for the decorator we need at the rate, okay, which starts, a function which starts with this at the rate sign is a decorator. Okay, so at the rate app dot root, and in the parenthesis it is the URL pattern. One must give the URL pattern, friends. Okay, so after that we will define the function. Okay, so what this block of code is doing is, the Flask is binding this function def wish return hello world. This function is binded to this URL pattern. So this decorator is doing what? The simple function which is defined as def wish return hello world. This is a simple function, but with the decorator on the top of it, what is doing is, whenever a user opens the browser and type the URL pattern, that means only slash means it's a home page. Okay, URL pattern like this, then the Flask comes and executes this function, friends. That means URL pattern will execute a specific function. Okay, if you want slash say sign up, slash sign up, if a user goes to the browser and types the URL as slash sign in or sign up kind of things, then the particular function below this decorator will be executed. For different patterns, different functions we will define, friends. So since it is a starting beginner class, we are defining a simple function. So if you type this home page, then the Flask comes and executes this function, which will return simple hello world string as a response to the user, right? Okay, this is the functionality defined by this block. And then come behind, after this function we had mentioned one condition. What is this condition, friends? If some condition we had given, so if this condition is met, then only this app.run function will be executed, otherwise it not. Let me discuss about this condition here. It's a very important in Python. So double under name double under equal to string double under main double under. So what this condition is, whether this file is executing as a part of, as an imported uh, part of an in the other file, or whether this file is running as itself without importing. Okay, without importing means the name variable will contain the main. Okay, otherwise the name variable will contain the file name in which that this file is imported. Okay, so if you are a starter or beginner, it's a little bit confusing for the first time, but if you goes on and on, it will be understood by you. Okay, so it's a very simple. The name is a special variable in Python which stores the executing file, current executing file. Okay, file name, right? So if the file is executing without importing, right, then the name variable will hold main, right, which denotes it is not imported by anybody, the file is executing by itself. And when the name variable will contain the file name, when the same file is imported into the another file, okay, then the double under name doesn't contain this main, it will contain the file name onto which it was imported, right? Okay, so this is a condition. So without this condition also it will work, but we are giving this thing to force the execution to run the application only when the file is executing by itself, right? Okay, after running this application, the development server will start, friends. After the development server starts, one IP will come. So whenever the user goes and types that IP address into the web browser, then this hello world string will be returned into the web page as a response, right? So how to execute this file? So second step is executing this file. Okay, so move to the Flash tutorials and Python flash.py. In this way, if you execute, then the web development server will start and it will run on a specific IP, friends. Okay, so this is the explanation of this code snippet. So since this is the first class, I am elaborately discussed each and every line, friends. In the next classes, because this is the fundamental class which you must understood each and every line very clearly. That's why I am taking much time for this initial class. Okay, this decorator, what this decorator is doing, what this function is meant for, so what this condition is doing, when this app will run, okay, all these things. So in the future sessions this code block will appear as a very common thing, right? Okay, now let me move to this practical session. So whatever we had left in the last class, I am in the Flask environment. So let me clear this terminal. So let me add the project folder to our VS Code. Okay, here you will see the created environment called Flask-env, in which we have the libraries, scripts, everything, friends. Okay, and now we need to create the Python file. Okay, before moving that we need to change the Python interpreter. So here it is showing Python 3.9 64-bit, which is a global Python interpreter. So now we don't want that because we had created one virtual environment and we need to move to that virtual environment Python interpreter, okay, which is isolated from a global package. So in order to move that we need to Control Shift P, go to the command palette, select Python interpreter. So what Python interpreter we need? Inside the Flash tutorials we have one virtual environment called Flask-env. So you please clearly observe here this Python 3.9.0 64-bit is a global Python interpreter as a global package, right? So this Python 3.9.0 64-bit inside the brackets Flask-env, this is an isolated environment, so in which we have specifically installed a Flask. In this Python interpreter there is no Flask installed into it. It is a global package. This is a virtual environment. Please select this one. Okay, after selecting this one you can see now our project uses this Python interpreter which is installed into the Flask virtual environment, friends, right? Okay, then now we need to create what? A Python file which is called flask.py, right? Okay, now we need to code from Flask module import Flask. Okay, friends, and then after, sorry, it is capital F. After importing, what we should do? We should instantiate that Flask class into a reference variable Flask double under name double under. Okay, so this Flask class, this constructor requires this name, right? And then after instantiating, what we are doing? We are using a decorator dot root decorator and we are binding that function to this root, right? Then we will define which function to execute. Wish, right? As simple as that, return simply hello world. Okay, finish. And then we are giving a condition if double under name double equal to what? Main. So all this explanation I had discussed in the theory. So then only we should run this Flask application. Okay, friends. So first step we are importing a Flask class, and then we should instantiate that Flask class into a reference variable, and in this Flask class we have one root decorator which binds a function to its URL pattern like this. Okay, that means what? If any user opens the web browser and type this specific pattern, then the Flask will execute this function and returns the hello world. So when it will run, whether this flask.py file is executing by itself, it is not imported to the to some other file. Okay, right, let us run it. So cd dot dot move to the Flask tutorials, right. I am inside this Flask tutorial file, friends. Now I am running python flask.py. We have an error here. So where it is there? Okay, right. So avoid this file name. Let's give some app.py, right. Now I am clearing because it is giving a clash. Python flask flask. So python app.py. Here serving Flask app lazy loading. So the web server was started. So this is the indication for that. So environment production warning, this is a development server. So you can discard all these messages which is a high level ones. So as we go along we will discuss all these things, friends. For just now you keep in the mind, after executing this app.py file, this Flask app is ready and it executes the web development server and it is running on this particular IP, friends. Here you have to note. So this is the IP which you should type in the browser. So move to the browser and here just copy and paste 127.0.0.1 colon 5000. So this simple hash is there. No, this is the pattern which we had discussed here, this one. Okay, so after the IP, this is the home page, like, right. So if you do this one, it will return hello world as a response. That means here we are requesting for a specific resource from the web server which was started here, right. It is running internally and this web server will respond with what content, that content we have defined here. Okay, so whenever the user comes to the web browser and type this pattern, what content we should deliver to the user as a response? This is a hello world. So who is responsible for this receiving that request and delivering the response? This is the web server which is running on this IP. Okay, friends, this is the total preliminary basic topic of Flask. Okay, and in the next class we will discuss some more topics, friends. Till then, bye bye, and let me summarize this one before going, shutting, exiting. So first of all, we had created a Flask app. So let me rename this one Flask.py. It is conflicting with this application. So we need to modify it as app.py, right, and here also app.py. Okay, okay. This file name other than flask.py, you can name any name you want. So after that you can code the Python like this. After that execute the Python file like this. So after executing this Python file, a server, internal built-in server starts. After starting that built-in server, open the web browser and give the URL pattern like this with the IP, then whatever function you had defined here, that will be executed. Okay friends, that is the bottom line. Okay friends, in the next classes we will come up with some more topics. Till then, bye bye. Your Svira signing off.